talking about. Like, I can't even take some of this seriously, honestly. Like, was this written by a bot? Because I just, like... Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name is Mickey. I am a therapist and we talk about therapy things on this channel. Forgot to breathe for the whole intro, my god. We are talking about the transformed wife today, otherwise known as Lori Alexander, because she has some like real problematic takes about psychology and mental health. I mean, she's problematic takes about everything, but like we're talking about her problematic takes on psychology and mental health today because that's like our lane. So we're talking about that today. As always, with the religious and Christian and fundamentalist content that we make on this channel, I want to issue a very clear caveat before we get started. This is not at all meant to be commentary about people who are like regular Christians or normally religious. I don't care. It doesn't make really a difference to me what you choose to do or believe in your own personal lives. This is not a commentary on that. We're talking about Lori Alexander and we talk about other fundamentalist Christians because the beliefs that they hold are actively harmful to folks and they are so far outside of the fringes of regular Christianity that we're starting to get into cult-like territory. We're starting to get into like, you know, like danger to self and others type of territory. And it's important for us to call out misinformation where it exists. And so again, I want to be clear, we're talking about these takes in particular and like fundamentalist Christianity, not regular Christians. Before we jump into it, if you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, you should subscribe. There's a button down there, you should click it. And then while you're down there, you may as well click the like button because it's probably going to be a fun video. So, okay, let's start with some tweets. I've collected a couple of tweets from like the recent months when we're filming this. It's November, so I've collected some from like September, October, November. And so we're going to talk about those. I know that her Twitter is like a gold mine for problematic takes. I know that she also has a YouTube channel and I am planning on talking about that eventually. But for today, we are talking about her Twitter only because like I said, there's just like really an abundance of content there. So if you guys like this and you find this interesting, then we will revisit the topic and talk about her YouTube channel at a later date. So let me know. Okay, this tweet is from October 16th, and it says, "We don't look at other cultures or how other women do things or what psychologist studies prove on how we change our lives. No, we look to God's unchanging and infallible word on how to live. His ways are perfect. We walk a narrow road that few want to walk on, but it's good." This is what I mean where like I take no issue with people who are normal Christians and are willing to abide by like, I don't know, fucking science, or like are willing to let other people abide by science. The like rampant and fervent pursuit of anti-science and anti-evidence-based practice is wild to me and something that I just cannot and will not understand. Everyone is allowed to practice whatever religion they want to, obviously, but I take issue with someone using their like fairly sizable platform to share this information that discourages people from consuming information that is evidence-based, that's science-based, to make decisions about like their mental health, for example. This is like so plainly and blatantly dangerous. Again, I want to be clear, I don't take issue with people using the Bible to like structure their like moral and ethical beliefs in their own personal lives, but when we are using that as the only thing that we are using, I think we can run into trouble because there's not enough nuance in there for us to have the types of conversations that we need to have about very complicated topics like mental health and mental illness. And so there is a lot of use and a lot of wisdom in learning how to seek out the appropriate and the evidence-based information to guide our decisions about what's healthiest and safest for our own mental health and how to treat our own mental illness. This shit's just fucking wild to me. This one is from October 14th, and it says, "Our culture is so caught up in not shaming anyone, which is actually a shame. Shame is good when it causes women to stop doing things that are wrong, harmful, and sinful, and to do what's right instead. It's what's best for them. Don't stop speaking truth for fear of shaming women." What? This is what I'm talking about. Like, I can't even take some of this seriously, honestly. Like, was this written by a bot? Because I just, like, we have oodles and oodles of research to support how harmful shame is as an intervention, both on an individual level and a societal level. And it is so frustrating to me when people who are not mental health professionals, who are not researchers, who don't have any kind of relevant education or training or certification on this topic are like, I want to talk about it. I'm the authority. Pick me, pick me. Like, no, Lori, no, we're not going to pick you. We shouldn't talk about that with you like ever, because A, she doesn't have the education or the credentials to be talking about that. But B, again, this is the issue with these people who are so far on the fringes of this belief system that they are no longer willing to entertain information from sources that are anything other than the Bible. That's a problem. There's a lot of evidence-based information available to educate us about the harm that shame can cause. I will link all of that in the description. I've been making a concerted effort, by the way, to link research that isn't behind a paywall so that you guys can actually read it. And so I'm going to do my best to try and include some stuff that you guys can see the full nuance and context of that. So bear with me if the research is not maybe quite as robust as it would be. But this is something, this is like Brene Brown's whole fucking career, right? Like, she talks about this at length. Like, that woman has written like a dozen books about the impact of shame. A lot of this information is freely available to the public, but we know that when we use shame as a motivating factor for behavior change, A, it's not a very reliable motivator for permanent behavior change, but even if it is, even if we do create the desired outcome long term, that's usually accompanied by such a crippling sense of low self-esteem and like inner critic that what is the word that I'm looking for? It hobbles a person's ability to be present and at peace and okay with themselves. And so it's very much, I think, a conversation about whether the ends justify the means. And in my opinion, in the opinion of most of the scientific community, it doesn't. There are so many other ways to create reliable behavior change. And that doesn't even touch on the fact that we shouldn't be making decisions about what women do for them. Like, that's none of our business. We shouldn't be telling anyone, really, whether they should make certain decisions about like their clothing choices or their sexual preferences. Like, no. There is a time and a place for creating laws and like, governing rules about what's safe so that we're not hurting ourselves or hurting each other. That's fair. But the use of shame as a way to force women to cover their bodies, for example. No, full rejection. I cannot abide by that. And I just fucking yuck. Ugh. Okay, this is from October 15th. She was really on a roll here. If you say you're sensitive and your feelings get hurt easily, you're really saying that your emotions and feelings are dictating your behavior rather than truth. Capital T, truth. Continually renew your mind with truth. Lowercase t, truth. Kick out the thoughts of being hurt and remind yourself who you are in Christ. This is like a nice little mix-up of the like mental compulsion thing that we talked about in the Girl Defined video, but also like shaming people for having emotions, which is wild to me. Like, this is, again, why I feel compelled to talk about these things, because this runs contrary to the work that I help people do as a therapist. It's very common for me to help a person or a client work through the emotional suppression that happens, that we learn how to do because society has very hateful things to say about people feeling their feelings. It's actually like a really difficult thing to overcome, and it can be very limiting in your life. It makes it difficult to have full transparency and vulnerability in your relationships. It makes it difficult to overcome trauma and a number of other like grief and like emotional growth things that are happening in your life. Not being able to be in touch with your emotions, like, all around, is a difficult thing for a human being to be walking through, and it drives me up the fucking wall that this person is just like, yay, woo, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna spread this misinformation, and like, I should be allowed to because I'm religious. Like, no. How about no? Because what you're doing is shoving this information down the throats of people who are either like vulnerable or may not know better, and you're causing them to become a part of this like epidemic of people who are struggling to understand why they don't feel okay, and then sometimes don't have resources to unlearn these really harmful and shaming things that are, again, like hobbling their ability to be present in their relationships and to feel okay with themselves and to live their best lives. Like, it's like the opposite of all the things that I believe as a therapist, as a clinician, as a social worker. Like, Again, I will link some research in the description to support the things that I'm talking about, but this is something that we know in the research also, that when a person struggles to validate and express their emotions, it can be difficult for them to work through a number of different things, including trauma recovery, grief processing, being vulnerable in relationships, etc., etc. And also, for what it's worth, in news that's a surprise to no one, this tends to run hand in hand with this very like evangelical, what is the word? Charismatic, like Christianity, like fundamentalism thing. It's very common. Okay, this is wild. Again, this is from October 12th. We were really on a tear in October. We can't teach women how to be godly wives for fear of abuse. We can never teach wives to be obedient to their own husbands as commanded by God in Titus 2:3, whatever, for fear of abuse. Sounds more like a satanic tactic rather than a godly one. Like, she really got on Twitter and said, I care more about people conforming to the religion that I care about than about advocating for the safety of women overall. Right? Like, am I misreading that? Because that's what I heard, which is a problem. That's cuckoo bananas. I just, like, this is the kind of stuff that is, again, like, just so far out in left field. And the thing that really hurts my heart about it is that there are people who really believe this and will perpetuate this belief system onto their children and in their families and shame people who don't believe this. Like, as easy as it is for me to sit here and make this video and kind of laugh at like what a wingnut this lady is, there are real people who are forcing their children and their families to believe these things and shaming their loved ones because they don't want to be abused. It's distressing, honestly. It's one of those things where you like can't look too closely at it for too long because it hurts my heart. It really does. This one is from October 21st. This says, this is why I am not a fan of psychology. Let's stick to God's word. God created men and he created them to be masculine, to protect and provide for their families. And it's a screenshot of an LA Times article that says, traditional masculinity officially labeled harmful by the American Psychological Association. It is hilarious. It's not hilarious. It's like hilarious in a dark humor kind of way that she is talking about how she rejects psychology for saying that perpetuating toxic masculinity is harmful, because I went and read the actual article. I will read you some clips of it or some sections from it in a second. But they talk about how the traditional masculinity trope is harmful to men. Like, they sort of briefly touch on how the patriarchy is harmful to women, but what they're actually talking about in the article is how the toxic masculinity trope far and away perpetuates this ideal that both harms and kills men. Let's read some of this, shall we? Citing more than 40 years of research, the APA warns against the masculinity ideology, which it defines as a particular constellation of standards that have held sway over large segments of the population, including anti-femininity, achievement, eschewal of appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. Traditional masculinity ideology has been shown to limit male psychological development, constrain their behavior, result in gender role strain, and gender role conflict, and negatively influence mental health and physical health, the 36-page report says. For example, despite being 4 times more likely to die of suicide than women, men are significantly less likely to be diagnosed with internalizing disorders because they don't, quote, conform to traditional stereotypes about men's emotionality, end quote. A heavy part of this article is talking about how men are dying and men are unhealthy and men are being harmed by this, and she's like apparently doesn't care about that, I guess. Again, this is the thing that is so confusing to me, is when people say these things about, like, I don't, like psychology, or I don't support psychology, I don't believe in psychology. Like, okay, I guess, except that the culture that you're perpetuating is killing the men that you claim to want to be a part of your life. So, like, you must not really care about them that much because they're both suffering and dying at alarming rates. Like, what? Let's talk about one more. This is a nice problematic take on Parenthood from October 15th that says children's childhood should be filled with innocence and laughter. Okay. Our culture is doing everything it can to steal this from children. Mothers, you do everything you can to not let them. Monitor everything that they see, hear, and read. Don't give Satan a hold over your children. So let's unpack this actually, because I think this was one that I like originally was like, maybe I won't talk about this because it's not inherently psychology related, but it kind of is. And I want to talk about how the like lack of privacy and respect for boundaries here is a negative thing for parents to be doing to their children. I want to be clear, I'm not a parent, I don't have children, and this is not me coming for parents, but I am educated in like human development and like child development and how the brain develops and the importance of healthy boundaries and like a firm and healthy attachment to our primary caregivers, for example, is, I don't know if I finished that sentence. It doesn't matter. Whatever. This is something that is a part of the training that I have as a mental health professional. And so I wanted to talk about this because this is a very old school belief that if you don't allow your children to have privacy or to have secrets, then you can prevent them from doing things that are dangerous, shameful, wrong, bad, rule breaking. You can kind of control them. We know from the research that that's not true. All that this does is breed feelings of resentment, breed feelings of fear, and create an unsecure attachment to your primary caregiver. This is contraindicated in the research as being a healthy intervention in parenting. I strongly want to discourage parents from having this like vice grip over the things that your children see and hear and read. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you should just be like, okay, bye, and like watch as your child runs off a cliff. That's not what I mean. But there is use in developing clear communication, healthy boundaries, and creating an open and honest dynamic with your children so that they feel comfortable to ask you questions, that you have these like, open lines of communication for you guys to talk about. Like, I would prefer that you didn't watch this show because I don't like the messages that it sends, but it's your choice and you're allowed to do that when it's like age appropriate to do so. Like there again, I think is a conversation about how to exercise these boundaries in an age appropriate way and what that might look like across the lifespan. But this, I think, is just like such a harmful and hurtful thing for a parent to be saying to other women who are also probably parents. And again, it's just like contraindicated in the research in what we know about how to create like healthy and safe relationships with your children. So all around big yikes, not my fave. I have been avoiding talking about the transformed wife because unlike Girl Defined, it's like not really funny. It's just like kind of sad, honestly. But I think it is something that's important for us to talk about, like I mentioned, because I am uncomfortable with letting people just spew hateful, shaming misinformation on the internet under the guise of it being protected by religion, because that's not what this is. She may be a like religious fundamentalist and a Christian person, but I don't think that that's grounds for letting someone just run amok and say things unchecked. It's very much the like freedom of speech does not equal freedom from consequences type of thing. So that's why we're talking about it. I hope that you guys found this interesting and or useful. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments. I would love to chat with you guys about it. Or if you don't want to leave me a comment about this because like it's a bit of a bummer, tell me about something that you're proud of. Something that happened this week that made you feel proud of yourself. Share with us if you're comfortable and it feels safe for you to do that. So we can like celebrate each other and say something nice. I will link a playlist. Is it up here? I'm pretty sure it's up here. I'll link a playlist up here with some more like happy fun times videos if you need some eye bleach after this experience. And then in the meantime, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to stick around and consume some more content and be part of our little community, and then share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.